We say goodbye to 2024 and say hello to 2025. While the Hurricanes have played 37 games, there's 45 more to go. And that begs the question, what is the New Year's resolutions for the Hurricanes going into the new year?
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a Thursday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you to the everydayer for making this your first listen of the day. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, talking everything about your Carolina Hurricanes. I'm your host, Zach Martin. I'm the credentialed Carolina Hurricanes beat writer over at the Hockey Hours, also the co-host of the Searchcast, along with all of my duties here at Locked On Hurricanes. But enough about me. I have to introduce my guest. I'm super excited to have this guy on for the first, second episode of the new year. So a first guest, why not? Super excited to have him on. He's been on before. Always a great talk with this guy. He is one half of the Storm Cellar, and it is Brad Moore joining me today. Brad, how are you doing? And Happy New Year's, my friend.
Happy New Year. I'm doing well, thanks. The Canes played last night. It's the annual, like, around New Year's Blue Jackets Hurricanes tilt is actually a game I look forward to every year now.
Yeah.
And even though they lost, it was the most entertaining loss we've had like in 2 months. So, you get a point, in the end, let's be honest, like Seth Jarvis scored a goal on us and Brett Burns pretty much. So we scored all but one of the goals as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it was definitely a weird game, that's for sure. Because I've talked about it even on the New Year's episodes. Like, it's somehow ever since the comeback game against Columbus, where Jalen Chatfield scored the goal from like way out from by the blue line. Every game since then has been absolutely just bonkers. No matter where, if it's either at Nationwide or now Lenovo Center, it's always a weird game. And you know what's funny, Brad? The 2 games that we've lost in overtime / shootouts this year, both came in the shootout, both against Columbus, both at Nationwide. So
and we lose a player to injury in both games. So that's the negative with Columbus is like, I don't know what it is, but
it used to be Colorado, now it's Columbus.
PK, right now Tyson. Knock on wood, man. I'm hoping we get to see Suzuki this week. So
yeah, I'm kind of curious to see what there's, because I haven't seen any recent news about what's going on with Jost other than he just didn't come back. So maybe it's just precautionary. Maybe it's a stinger. Who knows? But yeah, that was
11. So we should know something by like noon.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it's just a weird game of like how it's. I call it the unseries of fortune events, not the lemony snicket versions of it, because you look at, like you said, you have a hybrid power play because Carey breaks the stick. Then you have Burns running into your own goalie, which is basically just, here's a free shot at the empty net from Marchenko, who I think is like 9 goals in 9 games or 9 goals in 10 games. He's officially a Canes killer for the Jackets because he finds a way to do it against us. And then, like you said, they didn't get an errant pass that was going to go to Marchenko again on the back door, but it goes off of Jarvis's skate. Yeah, it was a weird game. At least we didn't get shut out in the shootout, but heck, you know what? You take a point. You're 22-13-2. I think you're still 7 points ahead of Pittsburgh with like 2 games in hand, and you're like 5 back of the Devils with 3 games in hand. So for me, honestly, you're pretty much locked in to the 3rd spot at least, unless something catastrophic happens, which I don't think it will. But I have a feeling the Hurricanes are going to make the playoffs for the 7th straight season. It's just, who are you facing in the first round? Is it Washington or New Jersey? So, honestly, I wouldn't
New Jersey right now. So,
honestly, I wouldn't mind Washington just because the fact we haven't played them since I think 2019 we got back into the playoffs. So, it'd be nice, kind of revisit that little, matchup once again. Hey, at least it's not the Islanders. So at least we got
I would love to see that rivalry get back. Back in the 20 years ago, it's been forever, but that was it. It was Washington, the Canes, and everybody else in the Southeast.
Yeah.
And now I feel like New Jersey is probably one of our bigger rivals.
Yeah.
So I'm with you. The Islanders, they play so gritty in the playoffs. Like I don't want to face them again. Although I had a lot of fun at UBS last year, but seeing somebody new in the first round would be great. So
yeah, well, yeah, because we haven't played like I said, we haven't played Washington since 19, so it wouldn't be bad to face them. I wouldn't mind either one, but if you're asking me, Washington wouldn't be bad. Because think about it, if we do beat Washington, you got Hurricanes, possibly Jersey in the second round. That could be very electric for sure for the divisional final, I guess, of how you want to call it.
And
but
all the Hurricanes' best runs, all their deepest runs have gone through New Jersey in some way. So
exactly. So looking back on 2024, I know December wasn't a month we really wanted to have. I mean, it was kind of really up and down for the most part. I mean, he had some good winning streaks, had some losing streaks. Overall, it's just weird. But you look at the three guys that I think kind of showed out in December, being Seth Jarvis, Jack Roslovic, and Sebastian Aho. I mean, yeah, Marine Niches has kind of cooled off, but I think with those three guys individually, I think they've kind of really stepped up for the Hurricanes when, like, their biggest guy kind of somewhat came back down to earth. Like, what were your thoughts overall just with those three kind of picking up for Niches?
Yeah, I think those are good. I think when you're looking at the month, those are definitely guys that I would be in my top 4 or 5. And I would only disagree a little bit. Like Aho's Mr. Consistency, right? He's a point per game guy, day in and day out, every year. If you look at just pick a random month of his career, and he's probably averaging a point per game, which is what he does.
Yeah.
I did get frustrated with him in December for lack of shots. I think it was the Predators loss. He had no shots on goal, and like Aho, I'm glad. I always say if somebody's going to assist, that's fine because somebody else is getting the goal. But you can't have your superstar not taking any shots on goal.
That was my thoughts against Utah, where he had 0 shots. I'm like, how are you not shooting against Utah? It's like that doesn't make any sense. And yeah, like you look at his shot, like his percentage wasn't. I think it was like 14.3 for the month of December. It was okay, but not something you would think for a superstar guy who you would hope to be shooting almost where Jack Roslovic is at like 22%.
Yeah, and Roslovic's he's been everything that we hoped he could be and more. He's one of those risks that you take a risk on the guy. You're like, hey, Tulsky saw him play against us and said, hey, we can do something with this. Mm-hmm. And he's been the man on that line in terms of goal production, which has in turn boosted Aho's assist production. So goals are down, but assists are up. For me, if I was given a third player of a month, for me though, I got to go with William Carrier.
Oh yeah,
who has 100%. Been, I think. He's doing all the things you want him to do. He's really boosted, I think, that third line. It's almost like back in the day, like don't take Nino off that line. Don't take Jasper off that line. Don't take carry off that line anymore because day in and day out, except for I think it was the Columbus game, like he made a boneheaded play, but other than that, like one play is the one that stands out in the last like 2 months.
He snaps his stick and goes for
and leaves, and it's like, dude, they have the puck in the zone. Where are you going? Like, come on, man. It reminded me of Brady Shea did that last year one day, and I was screaming at my television. But other than that, Jarvis, I think, has played really well. He's, he's not putting up maybe as many points as he has in the past. Part of that was his third line duty. But, the kid gives you a 200-foot game, and he comes to compete. I'm still not 100% sure that like he doesn't still have a shoulder or something. He was out for a little bit, and he's come back. And, he looks okay, but I don't know. For such a young kid, I guess maybe it's the dad in me. I'm just worried about him.
Yeah. Overall, you're still talking about a guy. I think he had like 10 points in 13 games, which heck, you'll take that for sure.
Yeah, and quietly, right? Like I didn't realize he was that high. So
yeah, it's just crazy. Because I have a 3 stars of the month article coming out for the Hockey Writers. It's like I think he's at 10. I think Roslovic had 5 goals and 10 points, and the thing is, he's on a 5-game point streak going into 2025 with 4 goals and 7 points. So his 7 of his 10 have came in the last 5 to close out the month. So, hey, you're coming into 2025 looking pretty hot right now. And team leading 17 goals, which, I don't think anyone really saw that coming. So he's I think he's 5 off his career high, 6 from breaking it. And then in terms of points, he's like only 20 from tying, 21 from breaking as well. He's actually on pace for 36 points, or 36 goals and 55 points, which would be both career highs for him. Which, for the fact you got him for 1 year, 2.8, where people kind of questioned that signing, pleasant surprise, and I'm not upset about it. Now it's like, okay, if the Hurricanes bring him back, what's the price tag and how long is the contract? But that's the thing for another time. But yeah, I mean, because you look at the month, I mean, you lost that game on the island against the Islanders. I mean, you're up 2-1, you lose 4-3. That was just an ugly loss. Yeah. Then you get shut out by the Ottawa Senators at home. But I mean, it's also Linus Ullmark. He's a Vezina Trophy winner for a reason. Yes, I know it's behind a stacked Bruins team, but I mean, you got to stop pucks. Like, you can't take away nothing from the guy. Mm-hmm. But then you lose to Washington 3-1 on the 20th. Okay, it's Washington. You can't be too upset about it. The Predators game was probably, would you say it's probably worse or just as bad as the Kraken loss? Because I think that was probably the worst loss of the season for the Canes.
I feel like it was worse because, I mean, so that loss and the Utah loss were both just bad efforts.
Yeah, you see,
the Preds game felt that way a lot. But, I mean, I know Ray and I had said, though, we said, of the 4 games that week, I said, I think you're only going to get 4 points. I think you're only going to win 2 of these. But if you're going to win 2, beat the Rags, and then split it with the Devils, so you don't gain ground, you don't lose ground, and lose to the Preds, because it's the Preds and they're in the Western Conference. Who cares? And it worked out that way.
Yeah, let's see. That's for sure. It worked
if we lose like we lose last night, I'm not upset. But if we lose like the way we lost to the Preds, I'm not a happy camper.
Yeah, that was, and the thing is, you're going into the Christmas break, like, you just beat the Rangers 3-1. You did it pretty soundly too, and then you go to Nashville, do that to the worst team, and like now they're not dead last anymore, but that's still pretty bad to a team who's not really had a great season. Then, yeah, you lose to the Devils 4-2 in New Jersey. What can you do? But like you said, you do pick it up. You win 5-2 the next game. A lot of chaos ensued, that's for sure. Had to mute a few posts because I don't feel like dealing with that nonsense. But yeah, if you lose to the Jackets like that in a shootout, you got a point. You end 2024 in a 13-2 record. Like I said, you are within the standings. I mean, you're looking at a 7-point gap to Pittsburgh with 2 games in hand. You're 5 back of the Devils with 3 in hand. So you're still pretty in a good spot. Yes, you play the same amount of games as the Capitals and still 6 back. But you're looking at a team this season who's a lot of people project to either finish 3rd or miss the playoffs or finish a wild card. Being in 3rd place with this record for a team that was pretty much not, people thought took a massive step back, I'm not upset with it. Yeah, maybe there's some games you kind of wish they were played better. Mm-hmm. But I mean, overall, I mean, you're looking at 37 games, not really upset where the Hurricanes are at and how locked into they are into 3rd place. Like, how are you feeling with the expectations of where they're at right now?
Yeah, I'm fine where they're at. I mean, we've been so good for a while now that winning the Metro, you start to get complacent, right? You start to just feel like, oh, like we're just going to be top of the Metro, or maybe we'll be in second for a while, but it'll end up fine.
Yeah.
But this was supposed to be an off year. The quote unquote expert said probably going to miss the playoffs, the whole shebang. I think all of the Caniacs knew that's not just going to happen. It's just not going to be that bad. And even if we fall off, who's going to be better than us? And Washington's been like the one surprise. Like the Rangers were expected to be top 3 in the Metro. They are terrible.
Dead last.
Columbus and Pittsburgh, I think, are better than expected. Even the Flyers, but the Islanders, I think, are worse than expected. But none of those teams were ever going to be better than the Hurricanes. I mean, I'm sorry. We could throw out half our NHL or our AHL roster and still, at the end of a season, still be ahead of the Flyers and the Pens and the Islanders.
Yeah,
it just is what it is.
Yeah, like like I said, it's a good gap. So I mean, like I don't think anything catastrophic is going to happen, but I'm feeling pretty good. Like I've been saying it for a while now. I'm fine. I'm good with us making the playoffs. Like I know we're going to do it. It's just, if you play 500 hockey for the rest of the season, you're still going to make it because you have enough ground on everyone else. And I don't think any of the rosters below us are going to be able to catch where the Hurricanes are at. Now it's just who are you really facing? So that's going to be the main thing. But yeah, I mean, I think they took a slight step back, but it wasn't like, oh, they're going to miss the playoffs. And luckily, too, like we talked about, Jack Roslovic stepped up really huge. Eric Robinson's having a great year for the Canes as well. Jackson Blake's been a nice addition for the rookie. I mean, before his injury, Shane Gostisbehere, who's third on the team right now, he's playing great hockey as well. His first season back.
He's still like 7th in points for defensemen, even though he's been hurt. I mean, I know it's only been a few games, but I mean that's just nuts.
Yeah, and the fact too is like in terms of all defensemen, he's second in power play points behind Cale Makar by like I think 1. Like that's how close he is. Like Shane Gostisbehere is another one of the underrated signings where like you knew he was going to be good, but I don't know if he's going to touch Brent Burns' 61 points for the season. But I mean, you're talking like he's still been in a pretty good spot right now. And yeah, he's missed 2 games. Now they're talking might be week to week, possibly not day to day. So hopefully it's not too much longer, but I think Ty Smith has done pretty well in the 2 games that he's covered for me. He scored his first goal against Columbus. Yes, it's off a stick of Provorov, but hey, they don't ask you how, they ask you how many.
Well, that's right.
So that's really matters. So, but
I thought Smith has done an admirable job coming in. I think, Ghost is one of those players who, when he's clicking, like he's just incredibly dynamic. And even when he's having what's kind of a bad game, he's still better than most of the options in the league. So, he's at 27 points. Like I don't know that he'll beat Burns' record this year, but I would definitely add the caveat of this year because I think as Ghost stays here, especially next year, depending on what they do with all the cap money they have available, if they load up with some firepower, Ghost is going to have
he's
ton of assists.
Oh, he's definitely going to pop off next year with Morrow, possibly Morrow, probably Nikish. And I'm curious to see how next year's roster is going to be with all the influx of guys we're going to get with all that cap space. Even talk about his like line partner in Walker. I mean, Walker's been playing great over the last few games too. We've talked about it, and Rod said it a bunch of times. It just takes guys a little bit longer on the defensive side to get used to the system. Now we're seeing it over the last few games. Walker's coming into his own, and you're glad to have him for the next 5 seasons because I think he's been playing some great hockey. So
pick up for a third pair, and they haven't been as good defensively as I think they can be, but that's part of figuring out the system, right?
Oh yeah,
part of just the ebb and flow of things, and you can't plant it all on them because the whole team has not been as good defensively, so it's going to show. So it probably looks worse than it really is when I'm looking at stats. But I think team defense wise, they've taken a little bit of a step back. But if they can play the rest of the season like they played against Columbus, where even if they don't play great, they're putting forth an effort and playing pretty solid hockey, they'll be fine.
Yeah, well, when you got Slavin back there, and of course Orlov and Sheffield putting up a plus 30 combined. Not too worried about. Yeah, not worried about that at all. So that closes the page on 24. We are going to talk about 2025, and we do have game on Thursday against the Florida Panthers to kick off the new part of the season. So we'll jump into that here in a second on a Thursday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of my favorite memories was attending a concert last year. The energy and the excitement were unforgettable. Now Gametime has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Gametime Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time on searching through thousands of tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONAHL for $20 after your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Well, it's game time. Welcome back to segment 2 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. So like I said at the end of segment 1, the Hurricanes are going to go to the Florida Panthers on Thursday for their last matchup of the season. The game is going to be on 7 p.m. Eastern on FanDuel Sports South. Panthers are currently 23-13-2 this season. And the last time these two teams met up, it was right after Thanksgiving, and it was that back-to-back where the Panthers won 6-3 in Carolina, and then it followed up with a 6-0 win the next night. Now, over the last 5 games, Alexander Barkov has 4 goals, leading the team. Sam Reinhart with 2 assists and Matthew Tkachuk with 2 assists. For the Hurricanes, Jack Roslovic in the last 5 games, obviously the 7 points. He also has 4 goals, and Seth Jarvis does have 5 assists. So, looking at the team stats, Brad, and this is something that's very interesting for me in terms of when you look at it, is the fact that the Hurricanes are 5th in the power play at 25.6%. And as of last night, they are now back in first place on the penalty kill at 85.2. But you look at the Panthers side of things, 25.2 for 6 on the power play, but they are 80.9% at 16th in the NHL, so exactly dead middle. Looking at the two teams in terms of at least the special teams, you kind of have to feel good for the Carolina Panthers or the Carolina Hurricanes. I almost said Carolina Panthers. My brain. How's that like? What does that look like to you when you look at the special teams and look at the dynamic of the Hurricanes being in top 5 or both? You look at Florida and you're kind of like 16th on the penalty kill. Maybe there's a chance.
Yeah, I think Florida started out red hot, right? I think they went 8-5, and I think it was 8-5 in December, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at the overall stats, right, like their 5-on-5 play in particular,
Mm-hmm.
I mean their goal differential's down to a +12. I think they were up in the mid-20s at one point.
Yeah, they have definitely cooled off.
Yeah, they're 6-4 in their last 10. You know, the Hurricanes are 5-4-1,
Mm-hmm.
and the Hurricanes penalty kill in particular has been particularly off. I mean, it was bad only by Hurricane standards, but now that it's up there, not too worried about that, right? I think in terms of special teams, the Hurricanes can shut down the Panthers offense. So then it becomes, can our power play score on them? And if you think about it, they're middle of the league, but they're only 5 percentage points behind, right?
Yeah.
So for every 20 power plays that they or penalty kills that they have to kill, they're only giving up 1 extra goal. So even though it's middle of the league, it's not that far off. You know, that being said, I think the idea of the Panthers juggernaut, you know, defending Stanley Cup champs, the team that just ran you out of the, you know, 2 buildings a month ago. I'm not as worried about this game because I think the Hurricanes are going to come out on top for this one. In terms of they're going to come out ready to fight this one. I don't think there's any question. They want some revenge. They know that they were embarrassed last time.
Oh yeah, they got dog walked for
off
sure.
Enough. So I think it's going to be a good tilt. I expect the Hurricanes should win this, but only because I think how embarrassed they were, you know, to get shut out. And then the other game was like, what, 6-3? I mean,
6-3 and 6-0
to a team in 2 nights.
Mm-hmm.
That hurts. And these guys are professionals, and you know, you don't get too high, you don't get too low if you're a professional, but you know, these guys don't like to lose. You know, that's I'm sure that's in the back of their mind. I bet this has been circled on there since, you know, the beginning of the month. Like, hey, it's, you know, we're gonna get into the new year. First up is the Panthers. So I think if it becomes a special teams battle, I think the Hurricanes have an edge, but it's really close. I would rather see them win this 5-on-5, but with NHL officiating, everybody's, you know, flip a coin, right? Like, we'll see. Yeah. It was brutal, but it was kind of brutal everywhere. So
yeah, well, that's how it was against the Devils too. It was brutal on both sides, in Newark and back in Carolina. And the last time the Hurricanes played on January 2nd, they went to Madison Square Garden, put it to the Rangers 6-1. So there's a good possibility we might get some of that magic again. And you talk about 5-on-5 play. You're talking goals for per game. The Hurricanes are 5th at 3.46. Florida's at 3.39, which is 6th in the NHL. But then the goals allowed, I think this is where you're talking about how they've gone from the mid-20s into the teen range of their goal differential. Mm-hmm. The Hurricanes are 9th at 2.81 goals allowed per game. So you're talking top 10 for scoring and not letting the other team put the puck in the net on you. The Florida Panthers are actually 19th in the NHL, 3.13 goals allowed per game. So you're talking closer to the bottom half. So while they are scoring a good amount of goals, they're also letting in a lot too. So I think that's where you're seeing that goal differential kind of dropping in terms of that aspect, and why Carolina's is still so high, because they're still, while they're putting up 3, 4, 5 goals a game, they're only giving up maybe 1 less than that. So you're not really seeing that massive possible difference. I mean, of course, like I said, the 2 games against Florida was it 12-3 in terms of a goal differential. So I don't think it's going to be that lopsided, but I think seeing where Florida is, you can kind of tell, okay, now we see why their goal differential is maybe so much lower, because they're giving up a lot more as of late, because you're 19th in the NHL.
Yeah, a lot of 1-goal games there.
Yeah. So it'd be definitely surprising. Now, I'm curious to see how the goaltending situation is going to be, because we know we saw, Piotr against Columbus. I would expect with the day off in between, I would probably see him back in the net once again because he's 14-7-1 with a 252 goals against average and it's an 8.99 save percentage and a shutout for Florida. Probably Sergei Bobrovsky, who's 17-7-1 with a 281 and an 8.96 with a shutout as well. I will say this, though. I think for Piotr's save percentage, while, yes, it's up sub 900 by 0.001, I always have to give it the caveat of look at the shot totals that the Hurricanes are giving up. Because if you give up like 2 or 3 goals a game, but you're only seeing like 25 shots, then, yeah, your save percentage isn't going to be like in the upper 920s, 930s. So I know a lot of people like focus on save percentage, but I'm like, maybe pump the brake. It's like how me and you usually talk about what's your plus minus for a defenseman. Okay, but what's his time on ice? What's all these other stats with it? So I think for save percentage is almost a context stat when it comes to that. But I mean, even for the Columbus game, you really can't blame Piotr for any of those goals because like what are you supposed to do on a hybrid power play? You get hit by your own defenseman and you get a puck deflecting off a guy's skate.
Yeah, I mean, of those 3, maybe the first one. If you're going to have an argument for when it's only the first one, right?
Yeah,
Brent Burns knocking you out of the way, nothing you can do.
Yeah,
puck's going off your own defenseman, and that happens. There's really nothing there. I mean,
yeah.
So Bobrovsky he's 41st in goals against. Mm-hmm. He's 52nd in save percentage, right?
Yeah.
So they're giving up a ton of shots. So the other thing that's kind of weird that kind of ties into goaltenders is, I mean, the Panthers are, I think, 7th or 8th overall in the whole league, like 4th or 5th in the East. They don't have anybody in the top 10 in points, in goaltending, in goals, in any of those things. So it reminds you of a typical Paul Maurice coach team, right? They're doing everything pretty well, but they're not necessarily excelling at any one of those things. And I mean, that can win you a championship, so it's fine, but
right.
Bobrovsky has not been the Bobrovsky of old for much of the season, right? It's
it's when he shows up for the playoffs. It's when he shows up.
Guys who can be magic, but he's not always magic, and that's the problem with spending $11.5 million, $12 million bucks on a goaltender, right? Like Shesterkin in New York, who now is on IR.
Oof.
Even Shesterkin, who most people would probably consider the best in the game today,
he's been having an off season.
Give him that money because that dude is as streaky as any other goalie I've seen. Like, can he win you games and make stops that are unbelievable? Yes. Does he do that for stretches? Yes. Did he go completely cold? Yeah. And Bobrovsky was the same way until the Eastern Conference Finals like 2 years ago in the playoff, right? He wasn't quite a sieve, but he wasn't lights out. And then they played the Canes, and all of a sudden he is like the best goaltender of all time.
Yeah, like they had to rely on Alex Lyon, who was like their third goalie at the time, to go and save them for the last 7 games to make the playoffs. And if Pittsburgh doesn't completely collapse the bed against Columbus and Chicago, Florida doesn't even make the playoffs to make a cup final. So yeah,
right.
The Bobrovsky is a very streaky goalie. It's just it's like he kind of coasts through the season, they hit playoffs, and it's like boom, he kind of clicks into gear and he gets going. Because you look at Spencer Knight, even like he's 6-6-1 with a 287 goals against and an 887 save percentage. It's not like goaltending for them is absolutely stealing games for you. Now, like how you look at Pierre Kachekov, and you're like, okay, as maybe his save percentage is in there, but at least his goals against is a 2.52. He has a really good record. It's just, there's some games where all goalies give up softies. Everyone does. I mean, we talk about Shesterkin. Everyone thinks he's like the next Henrik Lundqvist, and he's having a really terrible season. I mean, that's just goaltending for you in general. It's crazy.
And like you said earlier, with Florida giving up over an average over 3 goals a game means you got to score 4 to win, right? And even though Kochekov has been a sub 900 goalie for much of the season, if he's stopping everything but 2.5, you only need 3 goals to win on average. And one goal is huge. I mean, it doesn't sound like a lot when you just kind of go, 1 goal is really a big difference. But if you think of it like in terms of percentages, you have to score 25% more goals to win every night. You're just not going to win as often. It's just all the teams in the league are just too good. I mean, shout out to the Ducks last night for putting it to New Jersey. The Ducks are one of the worst teams in the league, but put them up against the best teams, and they come through rather consistently, actually. I mean,
look at the Sabres.
They play the top 5 teams, and all of a sudden they're just excellent at defense and offense in the whole 9 yards. So
I mean, look at Buffalo. I mean, Buffalo's on a. I think I don't know if they've won. I know that at one point they were on a 3-game winning streak after losing 13 or 14 in a row. They played the Islanders, put up a 7 spot on them. Now it's like they can't lose all of a sudden. It's like, yeah, it's just teams. Teams go through hot and cold streaks, and also too. I mean, you can get hot at the right time. Like, and I say this all the time. This isn't your granddad's NHL of like the '90s, where it's like, all right, we're going to Hartford 2 points. We're going to Arizona 2 points. We're going to insert team here. It's an automatic. Where it's like if you're Colorado or New Jersey or Detroit in the '90s, you're just going to go and just bomb the other team because you have a million Hall of Famers on your roster. Right. Now with the salary cap, now every team has got superstar players. You're going to have a team that's going to be another good team. Even like not everyone's going to have seasons where you're going to put up 120 something, 130 something points every single season. That's just not the thing. So
the salary cap's the great equalizer for teams that spend.
Yeah,
the Ducks are a team that hasn't. They have tons of cap room, but they've spent money on the right guys. But to your Buffalo example. Do you know Buffalo's only 1 point behind the Rangers?
Yeah.
Isn't that nuts? I mean, they had that
losing streak.
And the Rangers are so bad. The Rangers are only ahead of them by 1. And the Rangers do have 2 games in hand, but they have less than a .500 winning percentage. So they're probably going to win maybe one of those 2 games. You know what I mean? There's such parity in the league in a good way. I mean, that's one of the things I like about the way that hockey set up their salary cap versus something like baseball, right? Baseball has a salary cap, but if you're the Yankees and the Red Sox, you can exceed that as much as you want. There's just penalties, so it just costs you more money.
Yeah.
But when you have that kind of money, it's kind of a pittance because you're going to get it back if you win a championship. Right. So the league going, oh no, we have a hard cap. You can spend this much. This is the way things are done. Has really made even the softer teams to say because none of them are really. We joke about them being bad, but
there's some names on these rosters.
A Buffalo Sabres team against any AHL team is still probably kicking their butt pretty good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No offense to AHL, but just there's a difference in competition. It's just the best of the best, and even the worst of the best is pretty darn good.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So in terms of just coming into this game. I think, like you said, I agree with you. I think the Hurricanes is a good chance they possibly will win. It's just going to be, cliche it is, score more than the other team. Which as of late they've been playing pretty well. If you take that game you had against New Jersey at home, you win 5-2. You lose a tough one to Columbus. Of course, all of it was a series of fortunate events of weird, quirky goals because hockey. Because we all know hockey is weird. It comes to puck luck. It is what it is. I think you have a pretty good shot against the Panthers. I mean, it's 2 evenly matched teams. Like you said, I think it's an upset Hurricanes team that's going to come in, take care of business. Hopefully, you get a full 60 minutes and you at least get a revenge. I know you're not going to win the season series because Florida's already won 2 of the 3, so that's already out the window. But don't get swept. Just don't get season series swept. I think we'll take that, all things considered. And you start 2025 like you did 24 against the Rangers. You get a win. And then you move on to the next game and just go from there because we got 45 games left. Got to start on a hot streak and go from there. And now it's just kind of figure out what we do next. After that's the main thing. And speaking of what's next, we're going to do our 2025 resolution for the Hurricanes. So stick around as we'll do that here in a second on a Thursday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Not only can you bet on who will win the game, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points each team will score, and so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back to segment 3 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. And like I said, at the end of segment 2, we're going to do our resolutions for the Canes going into 2025. And Brad, let's start with you. What's your first resolution for the Canes going into the new year?
So this week on our show, the thing I kind of hyped up and said that this is the thing that needs to happen is I want consistency. Right?
Yeah.
Are the Hurricanes as good as the hot start they had? Maybe not. I mean, Marty Necas was on a heater so good that even though he's only averaged 0.58 points per game in December, he still has a 1.22 points per game overall. His hot streak was, I mean, the McKinnons of the world can do that, right? But Marty Necas had not up to this point shown that he can do that consistently. And that's fine. But they're not as bad as they've been lately either. So they need to find a way to play consistently. We need 60 minutes of effort from everybody. And if everybody's pulling the same weight, you're going to win a lot more games. I think consistency is one of the 2 or 3 things that they really need.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's kind of my first one too. It's just, and I've been harping on it for a while now, and that was like my wish list to Santa for the Hurricanes is more consistent hockey, because we saw in December there's some games they should have won. There's games where they kind of won ugly, and then there's ones where you're like, okay, this is the Hurricanes team we know of. Yeah, we're right. Maybe we're not going to see a 8-game winning streak or a 14-4 start and stuff like that. Back in November, I hope we don't see that kind of run, because that was beyond ugly for the back end of November, early December. I think they ended the month pretty good outside of that Nashville game, but yeah, you got to hope for consistency, because even if they play 500 hockey, at least show that you're giving us the effort, because that's all we really ask for is just, we don't expect you to win every game. It's impossible to do that now. Now, if you're talking like the 90s and early 2000s where you're loaded, okay, yeah, that's different. I'm like, okay, we expect to win every night. Now it's just kind of like, hey, just give us the effort. If you win, great. If you get a point, okay. At least the Hurricanes aren't like overtime merchants like some other teams that we know who can go and lose 11 games in overtime and shootouts and stuff like that. And you're like, how are they ahead? Oh, they've lost 11 games in extra hockey.
Yeah.
But it's not like that. But yeah, it's just, you got to see from your big guys every game of like, hey, you're going to put up points. Hey, you're going to, make a presence felt. And for me, I think it kind of goes into the superstar guys need to be the superstar guys. I mean, we're not asking you to, put up 5 points a game or 3 points a game every night, but at least let us know you're there, that you're actually trying. And I feel like sometimes when we see that too, like certain guys are like, where are you at? Like, I feel like some guys aren't really playing up to their game like we're kind of used to. So I think it's definitely one of those things. And I think for me, my second one is going out and finding more help for the forwards in terms of depth. Because I see this everywhere, and I think this is a very lazy take when it comes to, what's the resolution for the Canes? And it's get better goaltending. And I'm like, goaltending isn't really the issue for me. It's not the goalies. It's more of the consistency of the guys in front of them. So I think if you get a team that's playing more consistent in front of them, especially the guys who are playing 200-foot hockey and playing that two-way style and staying structured, I think that's going to help more often, because Pierre Kachekov has been playing great this season. Yes, he's had some bad games, but every goalie does. But I wouldn't say that goaltending is the number one issue. So I think if you go and shore up the forwards, I don't think they're going to make a Jake Gensel splash, but maybe it's like let's go get Ryan Donato, Chicago, or let's go get Jake Evans of Montreal, or go get this guy who's playing pretty well that maybe he's not getting the minutes, but if he comes to Carolina, he might fit the system. Because I love our bottom six, but I can definitely feel like our fourth line maybe could be a little bit better, or maybe there's someone you could slide into the top six that might help. But it's not going to be like a super huge name, but it's someone who's going to help the Hurricanes moving forward, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I'd love to see them go out, and I agree with you. The time to get a goaltender, I think, is past, assuming Freddie comes back and can stay healthy, which is a question in of itself. But if you're going to make a move now, a splash at 2C would be great. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be the biggest name in the book, but if you could add somebody with some size who will go to the front of the net, and I'd love to see somebody with, don't want to say a mean streak, but somebody who won't get pushed around. Like
Yeah.
Hurricanes are too nice. We say often like they're like Ted Lasso nice. Like there's a place for that, but this Hurricane teams need somebody who will come in there and be more of a Roy Kent, and they don't have that guy because I don't want to say they get pushed around, but the New Jersey game's a good example. You get Nate just gets run knee to knee. You get that Orlov gets hit in the head directly, and Orlov kind of came back and responded. KK jumped in, right? There was no huge brawl or anything, but the Hurricanes could use somebody who's, as much as I dislike the guy on the ice, like they could use like a Brad Marchand type player. Now you're not going to get Brad. Like the Bruins are pretty awful, and I know that he's at least been rumored to be maybe on the block, but you're not going to go out and make that kind of splash.
Yeah.
Could you get somebody who is not quite as talented, but who plays with that edge? Marchand, Trocheck, any guy who kind of fits that rat. The guy who goes out there and disturbs things would be a benefit to this team.
Right.
It doesn't have to even necessarily be like a 2C second line guy. You can bring in a fourth liner to do that job.
Yeah.
But if you can get the other team, especially if you can get somebody who can get them to give you a power play, as much as I harp on the power play, it's still one of the best in the league. So
top 5.
if they're willing to keep putting us on the power play, take it. So if you can make an upgrade like that, I would like to see somebody who is willing to go from the net, who has some size, and who plays with a streak.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Yeah, I mean, if it's like Trocheck at half, or I know a lot of people say, "What about Chris Kreider?" I don't think the Rangers are going to be that crazy to send one of their guys to us, not division rivals. I don't really see that. Like I said, you could look anywhere else in the league. You might find someone that's going to be willing to give up a guy. It's just what's the package going to be in for? That's just the main thing. Is like what is it? With some of these trades that we've seen already this year, that like Colorado, Nashville, all these other teams have made, you're kind of like, okay, the Rangers with their couple of trades, you're kind of like, okay, what's the ask for if the Hurricanes go for a certain guy from this team and this team? Who really knows, especially if it's from a contender? I don't think contenders are really going to give up their guys. I mean, I would love to go get Nick Ehlers from the Jets. They ain't going to give him up. That's just not going to happen. Right. So it's just, I meid love to get Cole Perfetti. Also not going to happen because, like I said, contenders aren't going to give up their guys. Even if we go to Calgary or, like I said, insert team name here, Ottawa, who are you going to get? And like you said, going back to goaltending, Freddie's supposed to be back end of February, early March. If the Hurricanes haven't made a move now when they've supposedly been asking for Blackwood and Forsberg, which Forsberg wouldn't be bad. He wouldn't be a bad option. But then what happens when Freddie comes back? You got to figure out how to put 3.2 back on the books, and you can't carry through goalies. It's like, do you make a trade for him? I don't know how you make that work unless it's part of a package to get someone back that could shore up here's your second line center. I don't know. So that's the thing where if the Hurricanes haven't made a move now, I don't really see them making a move for a goalie if he's going to be back that soon. And then you got to look at Earl Schwartz and his cap compliance rules that he does for the Hurricanes. How are you going to make that fit within a cap that's, I think, $1.6 million right now? I think last time I checked, you're taking on another goalie, and then you got Freddie coming back at 3.2. That's kind of a tough ask to try to figure out cap space. So,
and at this point, I don't think you could, like, the originally for me, I was like, get a rental, like get a 1 year guy, and then he'll be gone. Freddie will be gone next year. Then you have the cap space. I think it's too late for that. If you're going to bring in a guy now, I think you're bringing in somebody who you think is going to be part of your tandem for the next, 5 years or whatever it's going to be, 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, so that's like a Vegemelka type guy.
Yeah, that greatly limits who's available, right? Mm-hmm. And then somebody's got to go out, because if you're bringing in money, even with money retained, so the situation with the goal, I think, is just, it went from you can maybe bring in a cheap, or I should say an inexpensive rental, to why get a rental? You're probably 4 to 6 weeks away from seeing Freddie back, and if Freddie's healthy, when Freddie went out, he was like the number 2 tender in the league. So
yeah,
if he can stay healthy, and that's always the question with Freddie. Freddie still has a lot to prove. I know people still, he was the scapegoat in Toronto in the COVID year. And I think Freddie has the chip on his shoulder, but he's also mature enough to know how to direct that energy.
Yeah.
And if he's healthy, he's your best bet in the playoffs. And there's nobody who's going to be available in the league better than Freddie when Freddie is on.
Right, exactly, and that's just the tough. And that's why I think we're going to see more of an offseason move to go find that tandem goalie for Kacheka, because I mean, there's going to be a lot of guys who are going to be free agents with not only the cap going up, but all the money that we're going to get from Freddie's contract, Orlov, Brent Burns, the millions of forwards we have on their 1-year contracts too. So it's definitely interesting for sure. And I like I said, I know a lot of people are keep asking like, oh, let's go get a goalie. Let's go get a goalie. I still don't think they're going to go get a goalie. It's just too late for that now. And how are you going to fit Freddie's contract if you go get a guy? You can't run 3 goalies. We've seen that try to happen, and it just doesn't work. And I think my other resolution, I think my last one, and I don't got one more for you too, is we got to figure out the situation with KK. I love the guy. He's been playing pretty decent this year. Yeah, maybe he's not putting up the points, but he's doing that more defensive hockey that we love to see from him. I just think at the money and where his minutes have been played, I know it's been a lot of second line now because of Jack Drury being out. And he was clicking earlier with Robinson and Nietzsche, just of course that line's kind of also dried up for the most part. I forget what game it was. I know he had a blown tire. I think it was against New Jersey, where he blew a tire, gave him a freebie, and they scored immediately. I think it was that game. I forget which one it was, but I think for the Hurricanes is like, is he a fourth? Is he your 4C or is he your 2C or is he a winger? Like what is KK's job? What do you want from him? And like I said, he's been playing pretty decent, but it's kind of like, okay, we need to figure something out here because we can't keep eating 4.8. And yes, he's young. We still got 5 more years of this contract after this year. It's like, okay, do we keep trying to see if he gets better or do we move on from it? Because it's not going to be a buyout. Because I know there's no way you're going to tell Tom Dundon, oh, hey, we're going to take $800,000 for the next 10 years off his contract. That's just not going to happen. Tom is not going to sign off on that. So it's like for the Hurricanes, what do we do here with KK?
It's a good question. I wouldn't write off the buyout depending on how the rest of the season goes, only because the cap's going up to the mid-90s.
Yeah.
And with the revenue projections, it could potentially go up much higher than that, even this year, right?
Yeah.
We're finally to a point now where we're out of the COVID doldrums. Like the players are going to get their money. The revenue, the cap's going to go up fairly quickly, probably the next couple of years. Yeah. So option one is that 4.8 probably is going to look pretty reasonable for like a 3C in a couple of years, depending on what Jordan Staal does. So if KK can be a Staal replacement at $4.8 million, it's not the worst contract in the world. It's not now, but every year that goes by and the salary cap goes up, that contract looks better. So in 4 or 5 years, the contract probably is going to look really good.
Was either with a year left or it's like the last year of his contract. Right. Yeah, it's not terrible, but not
the 800,000 thing. Same thing. As long as the Hurricanes are making the playoffs and all, 800,000 a year, you bury that for 8 years. It's not the best thing in the world, but it's doable. But I think there are teams who could use KK as a 2C, whereas the Hurricanes are fairly skilled and could use an upgrade there. I think there are teams, especially think of teams like the Ducks, who need to hit the floor. Like they're not spending to the cap. They have the opposite problem. Like they need contracts. Like they need money on the books. So look, if you can unload Trouba, if you can unload some of the guys Tampa Bay has let go with horrible contracts, you can find a buyer for KK who's on a not great but not terrible contract. You know what I mean?
It's
always a GM willing to play. Yeah. Always a GM willing to deal. You just got to figure out how to make them sound good.
Yeah, you got to find a way to service. He's serviceable for his contract and what he can bring you. Yeah, it's like a 2 or 3C. It's just what sweeteners and who you're going to get back and who's willing to make that. Yeah, because there's guys who probably will take that contract. It's just I think they're kind of wait to like when the term is a lot lower to be like, okay, we'll take him for 4 or 5 rather than 6 or 7 at 4.8. So It'll definitely be interesting.
Or maybe somebody takes him and you just don't really get a return, right? You get future considerations, and that
draft picks
4.8 off the books is the compensation. I mean,
yeah, just get draft picks, get draft capital, if anything, or a prospect and draft picks. Be like, okay, there you go, got something out of it, I guess. But
yeah,
like I said, my resolution is just like, all right, what are we doing? What are we doing for KK? That's my only main thing. So, Brad, for your last resolution, what is it for 2025 for the Hurricanes?
Stay healthy. Honestly, we've had so many injuries, particularly in goal. I mean, Freddie Anderson in particular stands out, but just in general, we've had some bad luck with injuries lately. I mean, we have a Minnesota Wild team coming into town soon. Kaprizov is going to be out, and when you lose players like that, it's huge, especially in goaltending. So if we can stay healthy, and in particular Freddie Anderson can stay healthy, your team is significantly better with no other changes. So no trades, no picking up prospect, no nothing. If Freddie Anderson's between the pipes and he's giving you, 910, 920 a game and 2 goals against, you are instantly going to be in a much better place. So if they can just stay healthy, that would be good. And personally too, like we like all these guys. Like I don't want to see any of them get hurt long term. So.
Oh no. Yeah,
no, see how Jasper Fost is doing too. I know we have, they don't talk to those guys a lot because give them some space, let them heal up. But I'd love to know that he's on the mend, because it felt like a nothing injury a year ago against Columbus, of course.
Yeah.
And now it's like, he's going to be out a whole year, and now it's like, okay, well, is he going to be able to come back? Like we don't really have any info yet, but yeah, if we can keep guys healthy, I'd be really, really big fan of that.
Yeah, especially with Ghost out for who knows how long. Jost possibly might be out. Yeah, it's just if we can get Jesper back for next year, not a bad pick. Hey, it's like, here's your fourth line guy. Like, hey, you want some depth? Jesper Fost on the fourth line. Every team's gonna be like, wait, this guy's on the fourth line. That's just how stacked Carolina is. We got Carey on the third with the Jordans. You got Jesper Fost on the fourth. Or heck, you want to move him up too? Another possibility. But it'll definitely be interesting for sure. Those are our 2025 resolutions for the Hurricanes. If you have any resolutions for the Canes, make sure to put them down in the comments below. But, guys, that will wrap up a Thursday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Thank you for making this your first listen today. For your second listen, well, why don't you check out Locked On Fantasy Hockey? Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. I gotta say, Brad, thank you so much for coming on to this. It was a lot of fun talking to you, as always, to talk about our Hurricanes. And where can people find you and your podcast before we let you roll out?
Sure, we're on Blue Sky, Storm Cellar 97 at all the bsky.app or whatever it is, social. It is. They can always find us on Facebook at facebook.com/StormCellar97, or they can email us at Gmail, also StormCellar97. I have a bad memory, so we tried to make it easy for you.
Yeah, look, if it's StormCellar97, you'll pretty much find them everywhere super easy. For me, it's X, Twitter, wherever you want to call it, at One True Zach. The podcast is LO_Hurricanes. I'm also on Blue Sky as well, at the Zachary Martin. I do have link trees in both my bios, where you can check out my articles at the Hockey Writers, or just go to thehockeyWriters.com, search for my author page at Zach Martin. You can find my articles all over there. If you want to check out my other podcast, The Searchcast, well, just go to all podcast platforms on YouTube. You'll find it there. For this show, Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you listen, make sure to check out Locked On Hurricanes. Subscribe, follow, leave a 5-star rating and review, because I might just read it on the show. For YouTube, Locked On Hurricanes, subscribe, hit the bell notifications so you don't miss the show. Hit the thumbs up button to let me know if you liked the show as well. Share it with all of your friends and connects to become everydayers just like you. But I hope everyone enjoyed this Thursday episode of Locked On Hurricanes. I hope everyone enjoys their Thursday and watching the Hurricanes against the Florida Panthers. And until next time, guys, as always, let's go Canes.